Rose! Rose! Why would you do that? Huh? I was almost there. Why would you stop me?
I saved you. Tell me. That's how we're gonna win. Not fighting what we hate. Saving what we love.
For many people, this was the moment when the fate of The Last Jedi had been sealed in their minds. It had been a largely inconsequential movie up until this point. Finn and Rose went on a mission to save the Resistance, and they failed. Rey tried to turn Kylo Ren to the light side, and she failed. All of the potential plot advances had been denied by that same plot. This had been baking in the minds of the audience, and they weren't happy about it. They wanted something to happen, and it seemed that when Finn ignored orders to turn back to the mine, finally their prayers would be answered. Finn was going to sacrifice himself. It showed that he was willing to die for the Resistance, whereas just one movie earlier, he was willing to die for the First Order. Finn had come full circle. He had this beautiful character arc lying plainly for everyone to see. But no. Rose crashes into a ship, and she says this line.
That's how we're gonna win. Not fighting what we hate. Saving what we love.
It was at this line that audiences threw in the towel. They were done caring about a movie that didn't even seem to care about itself. Everyone, even the people who liked the movie, could agree that this line didn't make any sense. Well, today, I hope to change that. Hey guys, it's me again. Now, I know that for many of you, the last thing you want to see is another video essay about The Last Jedi, and I get it. There have been so many videos made about this movie over the past year and a half, to the point where it seems like there's nothing really left to talk about anymore. But that's what's fascinated me about this line from the movie. This line seems to be one of the only exceptions. I haven't really heard anyone talk about it before, and that's mainly because everyone thinks it's stupid and doesn't make sense and is contradictory. But for this video, I wanted to move past that. I wanted to give Rian Johnson the complete benefit of the doubt and just see what would happen if I investigated the meaning of this line as much as I could. And honestly, what I found was pretty mind-blowing. So I'm going to share that with you today. I want to start by debunking a common assumption that everyone has about this line. Everyone likes to say that this is such a ridiculous line because fighting what you hate and saving what you love are the same thing. Except no, they're not. They're completely different actually. For one thing, this is fighting what you hate.
I'll destroy her, and you, and all of it.
And this is saving what you love.
He's doing this for a reason. He's stalling so we can escape.
This is fighting what you hate. And this is saving what you love. Do you notice the pattern that these scenes have? Whenever a character fights what they hate, they are punished for it. Luke Skywalker fights what he hates by trying to kill Kylo Ren, and he is punished for it when Kylo Ren turns to the dark side. Poe Dameron fights what he hates by leading an attack on the First Order dreadnought, and he is punished by inadvertently causing the deaths of over half of the Resistance, and being demoted. Kylo Ren fights what he hates by trying to kill Luke Skywalker at the climax of the movie. He is punished when he realizes that the Luke he's been fighting is just an apparition, and that by fighting an apparition, he allowed the Resistance to escape. In The Last Jedi, fighting what you hate is seen as barbaric, irrational, and desperate. Now, there are a few cases in the movie where it seems like a character gets away with fighting what they hate, like when Kylo Ren kills Snoke, and when Admiral Holdo slices through the First Order ship. But look closer at these scenarios. By the end of the movie, these two characters are punished. Sure, Kylo Ren kills Snoke, but by doing that, he creates a new enemy in General Hux. And as for Admiral Holdo, well, her punishment is a bit harder to explain, so we'll talk about it later. As for right now, let's talk about saving what you love. If characters in The Last Jedi are punished for fighting what they hate, we can assume that they are rewarded for saving what they love. And lo and behold, that assumption is correct. When Poe Dameron saves what he loves by deciding not to join Luke Skywalker in the battle against Kylo Ren, he is rewarded with the respect of General Leia.
What are you looking at me for? Follow him.
And when Finn and Rose release the Fathiers from their cages in Canto Bight, they are rewarded with the support of the children who live there. Take a moment to notice how dangerous this scene is. There are so many instances in this scene where the Fathier could just trip over something and send Finn and Rose falling to their deaths. But that never happens. The movie protects them because they made the right choice. All of these scenes are clear evidence that saving what you love in The Last Jedi is good, and fighting what you hate is bad. Okay, if you're still not convinced, just look at the two main colors that this movie prominently features in both its final battle and on its poster: white and red. Now, in film and literature, there's probably no symbol for innocence and purity that's more obvious than the color white. And look what's happening to it in this scene. It is being stained by the color red. The movie spells it out for us here, that war and fighting what you hate is bad and corrupts what should be an innocent world. But you gotta admit, it's a weird message for a Star Wars movie to have. I mean, this is Star Wars. These movies are about war. And in wars, people have to do whatever it takes to gain an advantage, including fighting what they hate. So what gives? Why is The Last Jedi so anti-war when all the other Star Wars movies were okay with it? Why does The Last Jedi treat fighting what you hate as a bad thing? Well, let's go back to Finn's sacrifice and really analyze it. Sure, when Rose crashes into a ship, it's easy to write it off as another instance of Rian Johnson trying to subvert our expectations. But remember, we're giving him the complete benefit of the doubt. We have to assume that he knows what he's doing. And when we do that, the meaning of this scene starts to become clear. You see, there isn't really a beautiful character arc here that Rose ruins by crashing into his ship. There's nothing really different about Finn's behavior in this scene compared to his time as a stormtrooper in The Force Awakens. I mean, sure, you could say that he's serving the Resistance in this scene, but he's still only doing just that, serving them. Finn still thinks of himself as a pawn. He still thinks of himself as worthless enough that if the time comes to make a sacrifice, he should be the one to do it. And most importantly, he's still only fighting what he hates. The First Order hasn't worn off of him yet. If Finn flies into the cannon and blows it up, he would have died in the same way a stormtrooper would have died. And the movie has taught us that that's not okay. So Rose crashes into his ship to prevent that. For the Resistance, it's a bad thing to fight what you hate, because that's what the villains do. And the Resistance has to be better than that. But there's still the question of why. Why would the Resistance hold themselves up to such a high moral standard if the only benefit is a psychological one? And also, why is it bad for the First Order to fight what they hate? Well, we'll answer all those questions soon enough. But first, let's focus on why the Resistance can't fight what they hate. The answer can be boiled down to one simple but jarring fact. The Resistance are trying to prove that they are not terrorists. Now, before you click off the video for how absurd that statement sounds, I want you to watch this clip of General Hux toward the beginning of The Last Jedi.
This is General Hux of the First Order. The Republic is no more. Your fleet are rebel scum and war criminals. Tell your precious princess there will be no terms. There will be no surrender.
One thing that this new trilogy of Star Wars movies wants to make clear, the First Order hates the Resistance. I mean, they really hate the Resistance.
Blow that piece of junk out of the sky!
All fighters, all remaining systems will bow to the First Order! And will remember this as the last day of the Republic!
Now, this might not seem like anything new, but it's actually uncharted territory for Star Wars. Think about it. Even in the original trilogy, the Empire didn't hate the rebels nearly as much as the First Order hates the Resistance. Back in the day, there always seemed to be a shred of respect between the two sides.
The Imperial Senate will not sit still for this. When they hear you've attacked a diplomatic...
Don't act so surprised, Your Highness. You weren't on any mercy mission this time. Several transmissions were beamed to the ship by rebel spies. I want to know what happened to the plans they sent you.
Notice how calm this scene is. Now compare this scene to this one between Poe and General Hux.
This is Hux. You and your friends are doomed. We will wipe your filth from the galaxy.
The difference between the two scenes is obvious. While the Empire hated the Rebellion because they were on opposite sides of the war, the First Order hates the Resistance with a much more burning hate that is usually only reserved for terrorists. And since the First Order are on the dominant side of the war, they probably control what most of the galaxy thinks of the war. After all, history is written by the victors, so it's reasonable for the Resistance to assume that most of the galaxy hates them. In fact, they don't even have to assume. They know that most of the galaxy hates them. Just look at this scene for proof.
Our distress signal's been received at multiple points, but no response. They've heard us, but no one's coming.
No one is coming to help the Resistance because no one in power still believes that the Resistance are the good guys. And the people who still do believe in them are in no positions to help, like the slave children on Canto Bight. The entire working galaxy has been successfully brainwashed by the First Order. And to be honest, the First Order's story kinda checks out. I mean, come on, there are less than 30 people left in the Resistance at the end of The Last Jedi. And traditionally, the smallest groups of people always believe the most extreme ideas. From a neutral perspective, the Resistance looks like a terrorist group at this point, stubbornly refusing to surrender when they've clearly lost. And this scene right here definitely doesn't help their case. That's right, we have reason to believe that Admiral Holdo's decision to ram the Resistance ship through the First Order ship at light speed causes the galaxy to ignore their distress signal at the end of the movie. Because, think about it, on paper, this is a very effective way to cripple your enemy, but not a single person has done it in the thousands of years of history that Star Wars has. So the only explanation for no one using a very clever military tactic is that it must be a taboo. It must be something that everyone has unanimously agreed not to do because of how inhumane it is. But Admiral Holdo does it anyway, so naturally the galaxy loses faith in her and the Resistance and turns its back on them by the end of the movie. That's Admiral Holdo's punishment for making that decision that I mentioned earlier. And the same principle applies to Finn and his suicide mission. Think about what would happen here if Rose doesn't stop Finn, and Finn actually blows up the First Order cannon. Would the entire galaxy rejoice in the fact that the Resistance just incapacitated the First Order? No, it would look like a terrorist attack. At least, that's what the First Order would tell everyone, that it was a terrorist attack, and they would kindly leave out the part that they were about to kill them all in an abandoned mineshaft. The whole thing would just result in the Resistance making themselves more enemies. That's why the Resistance can't fight what they hate. They have to maintain a peaceful narrative if they want anyone to join their side, so they save what they love instead. It's easy to hate an aggressive enemy, but it's not so easy to hate a pacifist one. It's civil disobedience, guys, like in the civil rights movement. Okay, now I feel like it's time for me to address the main complaint that everyone has with this scene right here. And it's that Finn isn't flying into the cannon out of pure rage and hatred. He's doing it out of self-defense. He is doing it to keep the First Order from their goal, which is to break through the door, the Resistance's last line of defense, and kill them all. Finn is trying to stop that in this scene. So when Rose stops him, it kind of seems like she has a death wish. Like she is so committed to her ideals of pacifism and saving what you love, that she would rather let the Resistance die than let them fight what they hate. And what's triggering to a lot of people is that the movie treats her decision as the right one. I mean, that's ridiculous, right? Surely this is the moment when we can stop all of this investigating and just label The Last Jedi as a bad movie, right? Well, believe it or not, there actually is some justification for Rose's decision here. And it actually comes from another line in the movie that hasn't been explained all that much. It's this one, right here.
We are the spark that will light the fire that will restore the Republic.
That line right there, said by Admiral Holdo, and also said by Poe Dameron at the end of the movie.
No, we are the spark that'll light the fire that'll burn the First Order down.
Okay, I'm gonna get real with you guys for a second. I mistakenly thought that Admiral Holdo said this line, burn the First Order down, instead of this line, restore the Republic. So I wrote this entire next part off of the line, burn the First Order down, when that's not even what she said. But I've decided not to make any changes because the lines essentially mean the same thing, you know? So yeah, sorry for the mishap. But in my defense, you can't really blame me, you know? I mean, fires don't restore things, they burn things. But it's fine, it doesn't really matter. Let's get back to the video. Now, this line has always fascinated me because on the surface it just seems like another piece of motivational Star Wars dialogue. Like, rebellions are built on hope, or do or do not, there is no try. But upon closer examination of this line, you start to realize how unnecessarily complicated it is. We are the spark that'll light the fire that'll burn the First Order down. Why not just say, we are the fire that'll burn the First Order down? Why does the Resistance have to be the spark instead of the actual fire? Well, in light of everything we've talked about before, the answer is obvious. It has to do with the fact that the Resistance can't fight what they hate. Because in The Last Jedi, the Resistance aren't really the Resistance. They're more of a beta version of the Resistance. After all, they aren't allowed to inflict any harm onto their enemy. They only serve as a shining example of what a rebellion could be. The entire galaxy thinks that the Resistance are the bad guys, and it's their job to convince them that they are not. They have to generate sympathy for their cause. And I hate to say it, but if the First Order killed them all in an abandoned mineshaft without mercy, that would do the trick. That would generate sympathy for the Resistance. There wouldn't be much that the First Order could do at that point to convince the galaxy that the Resistance deserved to be killed. And the First Order's true nature would be exposed. Relating it back to the quote, the merciless death of the Resistance would start a fire that would burn the First Order down. So Rose is actually justified in stopping Finn, because anything, even death, is better than fighting what you hate in this movie. Now we're ready to talk about why it's bad for the First Order to fight what they hate. And if you think about it, it's the same reason. The same rules that apply to the Resistance also apply to the First Order, only the First Order doesn't follow them. They too are punished when they fight what they hate. And that punishment is the Resistance. The First Order created the Resistance out of their hatred and desperation to rule the entire galaxy. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what this movie is saying with Rose's controversial line. When you fight what you hate, you just create enemies who will fight you right back. For example, the First Order is just an echo of the Empire. It is canon that the generals who survived after the Empire was destroyed were the founders of the First Order. Just look at this Generation Tech video.
Gallius Rax revealed that he did indeed have several Imperial fleets hidden across the galaxy, along with a few worlds geared for manufacturing. But it wasn't until the last hours of the Battle of Jakku that Gallius Rax reveals his full endgame to Sloane. He had planned to take the loyal remnants of the Empire deep into the unknown region, where he could recreate an empire in his own image.
So this message of fighting what you hate versus saving what you love actually isn't out of place for a Star Wars movie at all. We can't say that this message is inconsistent with every other Star Wars movie because in the original trilogy, the rebels were eventually punished for fighting the Empire. The punishment just didn't come until the sequel trilogy. That desire for revenge felt by those generals after Return of the Jedi led them to create the First Order. And the First Order's hatred created the Resistance. It's this endless cycle. Strike me down in anger and I'll always be with you. They blow you up today, you blow them up tomorrow. Now, the purpose of Benicio del Toro's character in the movie is to show that the galaxy is starting to get tired of this endless cycle. And that is a very dangerous fact. Think about the one personality trait that his character has. He is apathetic. He doesn't care. The first time we see him, he is waking up from a nap. He breaks out of jail, then immediately commits another crime by stealing a ship. Then he ransacks that ship. And worst of all, he betrays the Resistance just to make a quick buck. Lots of people wondered why he was even in the movie at all, and I'll tell you why. He exists to give a time limit to the Resistance's mission. If the Resistance doesn't act fast, soon the whole galaxy will be full of people who don't care, just like DJ. His name is DJ, by the way. I probably should have mentioned that. Also, a quick little fun fact, I don't know if you've noticed this, but DJ is just like Han Solo. Think about it. He's a scoundrel, he doesn't care about anything, he runs from the law. Now, the difference between them is that Han Solo eventually learned how to care about things by the end of the original trilogy. But DJ does not learn how to care about things because The Last Jedi is a much more pessimistic movie. Think about it, if this movie were part of the original trilogy, DJ would actually help Finn and Rose with their mission and fly off into the sunset with a newfound respect for the Resistance. But that's not what happens at all, so further proof that The Last Jedi does not like war. Anyway, that's why people like Rose and the Resistance are so important to the galaxy. Because they save what what they love instead of fighting what they hate. They are unlike the thousands of generations of people who came before them. They are here to break the endless cycle of hatred, proving that the war presented in this new trilogy of Star Wars movies isn't just a war, it's a revolution, a changing of the status quo. The old generation of people who fight what they hate are being surpassed by a new generation of people who are smarter than that and who save what they love. It's an awakening, if you will. It's about the characters in the film inheriting everything that's come before in previous generations, whether it's the sins of the father, whether it's the wisdom they've acquired. And the question is, this new generation, are they up to the task? Can they stand up to what they have to? These are the words of J.J. Abrams, not Rian Johnson. So at the end of the day, this line really did mean something after all. All we had to do was analyze it. Okay, the battery on my camera is really low, so I have to make this quick, but thanks guys so much for watching this video. As you can probably tell, I spent a lot of time on it. I spent like a week writing it. So yeah, please do subscribe and watch my other videos. I would really appreciate it, and have a good day. Or have a good night, because it's like 2 in the morning. The entire Star Wars history is just this endless cycle of hatred. That's a bit much. I'm not going to say that.